ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהכל נהיה בדברו. The pandemic that hopefully is on its last leg in society. Hopefully, we never know, but we're doing the right thing with the vaccinations. We are certainly getting ahead. And at the same time, I think that this process of vaccination in particular shows a certain lack of equilibrium in this world. You see, for instance, that nations that are more advanced, economically well off, get vaccines and also have the means how to vaccinate the people. And these vaccines are also a little bit difficult because they require refrigeration and so on. And yet we find that certain societies, certain nations that have few resources fall behind, and the pandemic is still in full force. And so there's a disequilibrium, a lack of equilibrium in the world. You see that some nations are favored and other nations are not. Some nations, for instance, reside on a piece of land that has a lot of oil underneath, so that they are favored by nature. They have tremendous beaches, a climate that is excellent. They attract tourists, and others live in places or reside in geographic latitudes that don't have any of these facilities. So it is a very unjust world in which we live, Some are favored and others are not. Is it fair that I, living in India or God knows where, have not received a vaccine yet, and if I live in New York or I live in Miami, I already received a vaccine? That should be equal for everybody. We're all facing the same thing, but it's not like that, unfortunately. I don't want to go into the reasons for it, There are reasons for it. Some nations get ahead. There is a nation called Singapore. It's a little thing. No natural resources, no beaches, nothing of that. And yet it's way ahead. Take a look at what happened to South Korea. There was a war between North and South, devastated and so on. Look at where it is today. Even Vietnam, look at where it is. On the other hand, you can see in Latin America many countries that were flourishing years ago. I remember when I was a young man, many, many years ago, Argentina was supposed to be the source of food for the entire world. I think its economy was number 6 in the world at that time. And today, they are in default. They can't pay their debts. It's something altogether different. So maybe you can actually argue it's not only that nature favored certain countries. They have riches that others don't. But it depends upon what the people do. And that has repercussions, has consequences. Corruption leads to something. And afterwards you have to pay the consequence. But I want to give you an optimistic view of what I think where world history is going. Take a look. Several hundred years ago, we had an industrial revolution. The countries, the nations that had more men with tremendous muscles could go further ahead because you had to work the land and so on, those that had greener pastures and so on. So that took away, force. Now we have steam, something else does the work for you. And we have had a number of revolutions, energy revolutions and so on, that have sort of given everybody the possibility. Take a look at the internet. You want to study? There's hardly anything in the world that you cannot learn from the internet. I remember when I was young, one of the goals of the few friends that I had that had the means was the Encyclopedia Britannica. That was a tremendous collection of books where the entire knowledge of the world was there. And he who had that had access immediately to information that I didn't have. I had to go to a library in order to do it. In the library, you would find it. I mentioned that, or today, just ask Google anything, and he'll give you an answer. There's Wikipedia available to everybody. Today, the things have changed tremendously. And I think that we are going toward a more equalitarian society in the world. Because what is important really is what is in your brain, not what is under the ground. What is important is really how you're going to interpret things. It's a society of service, and the natural resources every day become less and less important in this world. Who are the greatest, who are the richest people in the world? The Rockefellers. That was, I think, oil, Standard Oil, or something like Ford, producing cars or what have you, the big real estate moguls in the world. Who are the richest people today? There's a guy named Jeff Bezos. You know what he does? He doesn't produce things really. He produces here and there. The most important thing, he invented a way of distributing things. Do you remember Steve Jobs of Apple? Do you know who Elon Musk is? His car company is now worth more than General Motors and Ford combined. And it's a brand new thing because it's invention, it is discovery, it is utilizing electricity in a different way. There's a new car that is now going to go, faster than light. I think from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. Who in the world needs that? But that's what it is. So these fortunes are from another source altogether, and that is accessible to each and every one of us. I think that we are going toward a more calibrated, a more equitative society in the world, because it won't depend really on your ancestry. It won't depend on the climate of your country. It won't depend on the riches that you have underneath. It'll depend on your mind. That's ingredient number one. But there's another ingredient. The entire universe is amoral. There's no morality in the universe. There are black holes, there are explosions of constellations, and here it's a different thing. But I think in human relations, if you are immoral, it has an effect upon your progress as well. Many societies that have tremendous resources, corruption impedes any kind of progress. So I think that there are two factors that are accessible to all of us: moral conduct, and on the other hand, intelligence. Artificial intelligence is going to be very important. Do you know that if you know anything about, and we all know something about the internet, and so, you know what your phone is? There used to be record players, there used to be many things before. Now you have a computer in your hand that you take anywhere. Do you know that you can speak to somebody in China and not pay a cent for it? I remember that when I was in the United States, away from home, I didn't call on the telephone. I used to write a letter every week because a phone call was, I think, about something like $30 for 3 minutes from the United States to Lima, Peru, where my parents lived. And $30, though, in those days are equivalent, God knows, maybe to $300 today, if not more. I'm speaking about 1947. And today you can do it for free. In other words, we live in a different world today. It is not a question of ancestry. It's not a question of riches under the ground, above the ground. Eventually, we're all going to be in the same boat. In the same boat, those that are going to use their intelligence are going to take advantage of progress that humanity makes, and also have a very important base in morality. In consequence, that hasn't changed, and it won't change in the future as well. So my call today is for stay closer to your tradition, and at the same time, don't absent yourself from progress in this world. We're all going to be better off in the future.